Hi, welcome to Nursing 4200, Evidence-Based Practice in Nursing. I want to give you a general overview of what this course looks like. Regardless of who your instructor or professor is, the same content will be displayed in the same way for all sections. So I just want to walk you through some of the basics so you feel a little more comfortable as you start to dig in on what may be a fairly new topic for you. First, you'll notice that if you go to the modules page, there's a course orientation at the top that has some of the information as far as your textbook that you need to get. You'll notice that when you go to the textbook thing, it says that you can have different editions. Prior editions of the book are fine. I know that they often tend to be a little more cost-friendly, so that's acceptable as well. See some of the course expectations and resources, as well as extra APA resources here. And then you'll notice down here, and again, if you're watching this in future semesters, this may say something different. So this may say spring 2019, fall 2019, whenever it is that you watch this. But anytime you come to this right here, this schedule is kind of a little roadmap of the course as a whole that you can download or print, and it's a really concise snapshot of what's expected and when. There are 5 sections to this class, 1 introduction section, and then 4 modules. In this introduction section, it's focused on one of the biggest concerns that we heard from students, and that was feeling prepared for academic writing and what that really means. And so a lot of it comes down to APA content and how to format things. And so the very first week, we're kind of delving into that to make sure that you feel comfortable with the writing standards before we start applying that into all the assignments. So you'll notice there's Introduction to Foundations, or Foundations for Academic Success in Evidence-Based Practice. There's a week 1 activity that you'll need to go in. You'll notice on each of these there's a due date and the points. Now I see this is worth 3 points. This is a 100-point class, so that's the same as 3% of your grade. So please be aware of that. When you come into the APA content, you'll notice there's a lot of different tabs underneath. Each of those has an information page as well as a quiz embedded in it. The quizzes are fairly short and fairly direct, but they are worth partial points towards your overall course score, so please make sure you address each of those, and you can start working on these even if you do not have your textbook yet. If you look down at the first module, the modules are set up similarly as you go through. So there's a module introduction at the beginning, and this will open up into a document that kind of gives you an overview of what that module looks like, what's expected of you. And sometimes there will be a few resources on the topics as a whole. So Module 1 is Using Evidence-Based Practice to Promote Excellence in Nursing. There's 2 videos here that kind of give you a snapshot overall of what evidence-based practice is and why that matters. As you look at the weeks underneath, so for example, Module 1 is weeks 2 and 3. When you come down here, there's a practice activity. The practice activities are short quizzes. Mostly multiple choice, fill in the blank style, occasionally a multiple, but they are based heavily on the reading in the class and are generally fairly brief. You can take each one twice. They're not timed, and after you've taken it twice, your highest score will be recorded. So those you can go in and do at any time. Chapter 1, week 2, you're completing those APA quizzes from the first part. So it's slightly different than the other weeks. But if you look at week 3, this is more of a standard setup where there will be a practice activity, and then there's also an assessment. There's also PowerPoints available every single chapter that students can use if they're more comfortable with that format as well. I recommend using them in addition to the textbook and not instead of the textbook. But those are embedded as an extra resource. You do not need to review those. It's there for you if you would like. So if you look at the modules, again, here's a module title, and you can go into this document. It has more information, and then it'll tell you some of the big things overall, and then it's broken down by the weeks underneath it. So like week 4, week 5, week 6, and week 7. That's a larger module. I also want to draw your attention really quickly to this right here, and it's not due until week 12 in your course, but it's never too soon to look at it. It's the Comprehensive Evidence-Based Practice paper. And this is kind of the big paper that you're pulling a lot of content throughout the semester towards. It's worth 15 points, which again is 15% of your grade. So I recommend just going in, opening that up, looking at it, there's, if you go down to week 12, there's an exact template document you can download as well. Download it, stick it in the back of your mind for a little bit, but have it there so you can start addressing it as you go. It'll make the class run much more smoothly if you kind of have that in mind from the beginning. So if you look each week, there's a practice activity, a PowerPoint is an option, and then you'll get into an activity or an assessment. Now, you'll notice that some of these, like week 5, say hybrid F2F week. What that means is that the hybrid students will meet face-to-face that week, and the online students, you can completely disregard that. That's just as a little reminder for the face-to-face folks. If you are a face-to-face person for the majority of these, there's nothing you need to do ahead of time until the very end of the semester. Also, you'll notice that where it has the date and the points, for the face-to-face weeks, the date that it shows here is the date at the end of that week, not specifically the class day that you go in and meet with your teachers. That is largely dependent on what campus you're on and who your teacher is. So as you scroll through, just kind of glance ahead. I know it can sometimes feel overwhelming as you look at all of that at once. So my recommendation to you would be to close down some of these modules that you don't need yet. You can do that by clicking on that little arrow and just kind of focus on where you are to start with. This whole course is open at any time, so you can work ahead as much as you'd like depending on what your schedule looks like, but do understand that your instructors or professors won't necessarily grade it as soon as it's turned in if you do work ahead. They'll tend to grade it as they grade everyone else's, which helps decrease the bias in the grading that they're doing. So I'm going to go in and do a few videos as well for individual assessments, but I want to give you the overview first, and welcome to 4200.